Hello, America. Well, species body longs to boys and girls, men and women. The human volume science, as each volume has a distinct identity relationship to itself, even the rock, even gases, space, part, matter, part, clear. In other words, formally they have agreed to refer to that distinct, these are distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. Matter is space have a shared identity as hyper, that which is hyper simultaneous, that which is actually everything everywhere at once, that we are actually true always, not denying the slightest exceptions, not making up fake exceptions. One of the things non-distinctly sickly against every colonist A through Z, against every Native American A through Z before that, and sustained through that. And then further additionally, this is a method more probably and demonstrably having been affected by that which had more probably and more practically the complete remote possession of the individual countries involved with colonization as a certain type of victims slash hyper victims, as a certain type of victim predator, pretending other, into records, only capable of it, forced, tricked, or persuaded to it. Otherwise, they would attach people to other fake words, because that was already the laws. Because since semi-ancient times, the ancient republic became criminally foreign influenced, and it fell from the syntax value, therefore the function value of the human volume science, as it had actually been known and revealed by the ancients, because they've been led by the identity of volumes, actual identity of relationship to itself. It answered their questions. How and why there are distinct languages with the letters just like English, but they're not English. They also understood that. Good, because the hyper simultaneous makes more of itself by making more simultaneous nature that is simultaneously as individual sequence nature too. So only one sequence nature is all simultaneous nature at the same time. And so the ancients revealed this to teach about how the languages, the sounds of the sounds manifest the way they are, distinctly, non distinctly, and simultaneously, as what is discernible. There's Arabic, there's English, there's Ukrainian, same letters. Makes no sense when we look at it. Russia also has these letters. In English, Z stands for zenith, the highest point, and that's only increasing. And the depths are in demonstration of the order of the finite, that which is too small to mix with this portion of its volume where we are temporary. Quality of diffusion slash quality of hyperdiffusion, also relevant to where and how Earth's a special difference is manifest as a temporary slash only increasing value. And so, vaccines. Body's omega extinguishes. C, inherent neutrality. Neutralize. God. God is an algebraic variable regarding a method of science /S that had been criminally re-engineered before modern religions even were revealed or preserved. In the preservation of means to understand this. But this has been separated because all identity of the ground locations have effectively been used by a vertical and horizontal database involved. Breach predicate acts delivery system method, criminal insidiousness delivery system method. But it was his first a method that took collusions at all locations, forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, only realized and fathomed, and sustained that. Not just against Native Americans, not just with them now, with the colonists a part of it. It was designed to cause everyone to blame other things, others, and ourselves, even when correctly, and defend that. Increasingly incapable of defending defenses of that and ourselves from what uses remotely. All aspects of data reception, sequence reception. So when I was in sixth grade, there were men and women. One that lived near me. One of them was a mayor. One of them was a sixth grade teacher in another classroom next to me. We have 3 classrooms in each grade. I believe it was every grade that way. And you have different teachers. And this is intercampuses, including private and public, including the differences between the public campuses and where the logistics, because this is tucking in confessions and demonstrations of where and how the volumes of the branches, every identity of them, like every identity of your body, of your body's parts, it has a semi-nature relationship. Its complete identity is simultaneously your complete identity. When it is positive to itself, it's positive to yourself. Positive and negative are simultaneous relationship to identity. They are also a hyper simultaneous relationship to itself. Relative to that identity of value / value progression, that identity of hypervolume, and its identity of relationship to itself as the value that causes evolution's fruits and gifts and means from nowhere, but per its system, and where it has complete possession of our syntax. Why and how we are manifest, why and how these sounds were revealed manifest with the same thing, individually grouped in together. Their identities individually grouped in together, different, are a demonstration of how they have a semi-nature relationship to what has them distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous relationship to itself, and further to its complete relationship to itself, which is where and how, for example, too, Earth's special difference is simultaneously inseparable from this. And so its identity is positive to all parts of space / existence. The identity of the hyper-simultaneous per science, that actually discernible. Not just the identity of relativity, but simultaneously the identity of hyper-relativity, where honesty and pure science, actual science, which does not bring theory into the public sphere. It does not pretend not to realize where and how the formal, sphere and the public sphere are still using theories and criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, qualities, and aspects, self-valued sequence shifts, self-valued overt / insidious identity theft / frauds / slanders roles / uses of it roles, tactically ulterior from the also recorded, as actually recorded, use of that by the breaching method. Every sick thing a part of American history, thank God, was caused by a breaching method. All exceptions were only, made possible, only allowed to be. They were propagated to be self-cultivated, where and how it made everyone collusions, where and how we are fact human nature. Now this, for example, where and how we use people's names. And so this is an identity theft / fraud / slanders method /S that people don't realize they have roles with. And there are means to discern this. For example, there was a man, I don't know his first name, named Peruta, who sought me out with others to confess, demonstrate that he knew my name through others. I don't know him. He's involved with a lawyer of Wethersfield, police chief, and there are people associated with him. Police Chief Simtron, and at least 1 year ago, associated also with the houses they involved with this, where they confess, demonstrate, and record uses of themselves differentially criminally foreign influenced. Not wanting to be, but self-valuing, but through other motivations simultaneously wanting to be. Now that's one of the things that still happens with. Now these are certain type of victims / victim predator are only allowed to be people A through Z. You have to understand that what really most of further the overt criminal enterprises is recorded through their uses of corners of the street near me, like with people tied to former director of the FBI, recorded involved with overt criminal enterprises, plural, with people that were and are timed uses of it on and off campuses at corners of buildings, with syntactical, fact nature oriented predicate acts / wrongdoing roles, simultaneously, differentially too, because there were others have been using remotely the overt criminal enterprises in the 3 branches of government and the exception nature tied to them as locations of a whole bunch of names with a coordinated identity, uses of it used remotely originally and still. How they get away with this overtly / insidiously is recorded. But you guys have to follow mandated law outside of courts. And so the people that are pretending to follow mandated law, and there are certain type of victim predator, where and how this breaching method knew that nature would be demonstrating to that genius that any body of the species body is instantly. All kinds of ways we could discern the finite being having been denied by the quality of fact, chief nature associated with the summaries, let alone the summary judgments. I mean, in summary convictions of the opinions of the fact chief and the convictions of the fact chief nature, people A through Z kept needing to hide the same sequence shift, finite, active, progressive lies, identity theft, frauds, slanders, instances, self-valued roles. Now, this is constantly using everybody per the same. When we come to things like slavery and witch trials, even if the witch trials were made up, where and how that wasn't told to us. And it has uses. But there was also uses of everyone by the breaching method. And so, in other words, there are courts we know, there are police forms we know, there are political voices we know had other told to them if we're allowed equality of fact, cheap nature, time cheapings, everything like that, honesty. They had replaced theater narratives, motivations for it, used to worse than obfuscate and screen, hide. The breaching methods, identity. Its identity of relationship to itself through ourselves, though. See, this knew how we'd be standing manifest before anyone was born as a value/value progression, as a fact, cheap nature. There are connections between, for example, between people. There's a certain type of child abuse, and it's roles with elderly abuse at the same time. This method had sustained all kinds of sick things, knowing that increasingly nature would demonstrate us in other countries, bound individually, grouped and together, tactical terror, where those bonds are being and having been needed to be used. When there's wars and agreements, the peace is not the value. Hyper peace is different than peace. And war is hyper war. War is used remotely effectively to maintain uses of isms, for example, where and how are they replaced what our founders really wanted and needed us to figure out by now. That and how syntactically we have to counter a predicate acts delivery system method. And the breaching method knew that we would have to counter criminal enterprises. The breaching method knew that by then, the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, as criminal and citizens, as a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise, it knew there would be archetypal criminal enterprises, natures of countries. Founded, but their founding had to hide their actual roles with it, with their preservation. And they had to defend that. And they knew they would have to increasingly, they would have to value how we were forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, bound, tactile terror from how we are by species itself, and by the identity of the hyper simultaneous that really revealed us. Individuals, grouped, locations, areas, ages, sexes, the things that it is that are invisible but still discernible, because they come when you put them all together. For example, means to discern if the finite details are being left out. So this knew that we'd be able to speak such metaphysics and physics and about identity with more sophistication than the people at the interbranch, because it's been used in them, and they knew that they'd be able to speak with more sophistication than us who are not interbranch, and the exceptions of nature is tied to that. Where both people are relieving on how we actually think and discern. We have a sophistication beyond definition by, side. They have readings of statutes per one of the Perutas involved. This is also recorded with Russian families and people switching and forging names, the men and women Russians involved with wire crimes with Wethersfield Police Department, Hartford, others intercities police departments through time, with roles planting evidences and messing with the sensibilities of people and making them self-value with that, forcing people to speak through others' people, making fake exceptions of people knowing each other, thank God we'll be able to discern. So what led up to the World Trade Center attack in that context, and in the Ninth Circuit Court next to it, leading up to a 2006 district court case with a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, as a defendant in that case. Three of his co-defendants and their family members were also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with uses of timing where I was going to be with the kids, foreign and domestic, on and off my campuses, involved with predicate acts with interbranch switching names, forging names now, roles with a principal child abuser since before that was caught, with other natures of abuses of kids, same ones involved with uses of elderly homes in the spots next to it. It is recorded, confessed, where they speak through others, they communicated. These are police forms that have roles with the different types of qualities and types of marijuana since they were kids. The different types of and qualities of like cocaine and access to those things. Other natures, the fireworks, even everything good and bad. People's roles with charities simultaneously. They have people kept needing to use insidious positive and negative and time treatments, which are simultaneously increasingly insidious names treatments, as collusions between campuses, on and off campuses maintain collusions with that from off campuses, recorded how forcing, tricking, hurting, persuading, taking, and worse, what nobody wanted and wants roles with, but they made exceptions, and where no one's watching. So they have more roles with remote uses of the police forms, relevant to where and to how they've been training. FBI, CIA, judges, prosecutors, they've had them involved with this method to all locations. It built those formal locations, knowing the identities that worked there could be measured and maintained, needing to hide time. The same sequence shift, finite, insidious, positive, and negative treatments, where it also knew simultaneously that nature would be demonstrating its identity of relationship through ourselves, through the colonists, through the early estates, through ourselves now. Other countries too, at all locations, areas, and states. Where the greatest wealth is relevant to where and how really a whole bunch of countries are shared on and off campuses here. Really how and why they have to keep that secret. Really and why and how. They have to simultaneously confess and demonstrate such. And pretend we're stupid. We don't have the means to discern. See New York City stacked upon. See the suburbs tactically denatured before our founding parents were even born. Slavery, north and south, involved with this method that had sick, crazy laws against every single person, against what they could say at locations, so they could maintain individuals, groups, and together, sense and sensibilities, only capable of being natures of unity and or of individuality that are criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatments, fact treatment nature. But we didn't cause it. But science has not spoke. See through the clear smoke and criminal insidiousness. So the ancient snow people look just like the identity of the hyper simultaneous identity relationship to itself that is positive. And that reveals evolution's fruits and gifts and means out of nowhere, especially regarding where and how we are fact-sheep nature. But so does the archetypal criminal the hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise, and where and how it's self-valued, and simultaneously increasingly having been is increasingly, as actively increasingly self-valued, having been, because in other words, people, this breaching method knew that the legal experts would have to self-value how criminal, they would have to counter criminal insidiousness, natures of positive and negative treatments by people at each age, because that is a propagated outcome, but that is again too self-cultivated, and now they have. So where this is self-valued now actively and increasingly, it is actively and increasingly styles of logic that self-value this having been. So they knew, our founders wanted us to say, they wanted us to discern how real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice, as the definition of Marbury versus Madison, and of the Constitution unabridged. And they wanted hyper additionally to this. They wanted us to discern how other, the breaching method knew they gave us this. It was sophistication here first. It stayed a hyper sophistication more than countries A through Z. So each must see. So in other words, all kinds of corruption with mental health is involved with wire crimes. Now, there are millions of Americans that know this. Now, they have also been roles with crime predicate acts delivery system methods in cases that are fact-sheep in nature oriented, and have been so long, where and how it was sustained against, it made inter-campuses, including inter-branch campuses, need to hide simultaneously the same finite, active, progressive lies with people at private locations tied to databases that have nothing to do with it, that do, etc., and overt criminal enterprises, and private, and how that countries really are here, individually grouped and together, how really we are there, individually grouped and together. Victims not knowing how to defend ourselves syntactically, never having been liberated. There's a breaching method since some ancient times that has screened from inside complete possession over the nature of the republic for which we stand in its campuses system, more traced and revealed than invented. It is criminally re-engineered inventions of itself, with nature demonstrating increasingly it having been criminally re-engineered in semi-ancient times. Sciences became criminally influenced. They became forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded needs and natures needed to counter syntactically the real causes for negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures at all locations, needed to increasingly value how increasingly humanity was needing to value ourselves, increasingly bound tactically ulterior from how we are bound individually grouped and together by the hyper-simultaneous. The syntax possession of why and how really we are the species identity of volume, distinctly from being in an non-distinctly from being an individual identity of volume. How each So, like for example, there are houses all along Ridge Road that have my name used with them by people all along the route that goes by there, from Old Weathersfield to Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, right through Newington. This is where that was involved with where and how people would self value what hurts them individually, rolls with it, needs with it, nature with it, and how they are given means to get away with that, even though nature is demonstrating it. This has been they've been they've been putting fake things in databases, even at the campuses. But to understand this, you have to understand how at other locations that all those collusions, them that goes into all the corruption we know was through history connected to such locations, databases tied locations. But all that, and then it tied to those corruption, individually grouped and together bound, we know. But everyone didn't fathom what is actually recorded, how that was used, applied. It knew that people would have to hide life progressions. They would have to hide their actually recorded nature and the actual value of that /S at all locations, areas, and states. And knew how it could show them how needing to. Gave them means to get away with it, like uses of words, politics. Simultaneously, with people offensively pretending to care about democracy and who was voted for, who are consciously being and having been involved, needed to pretend others simultaneously, but involved with preventing mandated law at all locations, areas, and states, and on time. You have to understand what has been connecting unrelated campuses, including public schools and private school, but also coordinating between. They're making it look, they left out the influences of others when there are instances between kids. They're making fake exceptions of people knowing each other with the kids that have been communicating with each other and their families have been communicating with each other. And then they were putting people in what needed to hide life progress. So former Mayor Gold and Mr. Bernstein, I never saw his kids on my campus in my life. They used to, and O'Brien family, people from other classrooms, they were stacking roles with also people from intercities, from Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, as individuals. I didn't know. I didn't know. I found out some of the names of them. We can find out more, like a Justin Levinskis. And so they used to hang around with the kids with my grammar school. I don't know if he went to my grammar school. I think he was right next to Webb School. Now, they affected confessions to me, tied to the differential uses of them being and having been simultaneously confessed, recorded, demonstrated, influenced, differentially, criminally foreign influenced, and offensively, simultaneously, preemptively, actively, and knowingly having to be increasingly criminally foreign influenced. Roles with evidence as federal rules of evidence as crimes. So little kids know that they had roles with federal rules of evidence as crimes. When I was in second grade, when I was in third grade, and and I found out how in fourth grade behind my back too, and in fifth grade, There's a Mr. Prusi, for example. He confirmed to me. The only time he sought me out, and I used to go to class and just listen because all I cared about was what consciously people sensed. And in other words, there are means to discern using how Native American rights and how Black American rights and were distinctly victims, and when how simultaneously we have so much means, so many means like that to change everything for better than free. All we need is to be honest. And see, we have other honesty other than honesty pretended offensively. Now, these are overt criminal enterprises, and their rules with acting coaches that are in acting locations implied and demonstrated, involved with narratives by natures pretending to be for the safety of plainclothes police forms, for example. To all kinds of evil and crime acts and methods with guns are fact chiefly nature oriented originally and still. There was a Joe Aiello who's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with a whole bunch of other people through time with the uses of corners of the street on Griswold Street for identity theft, fraud, slanders, roles, where people are connected to that, involve it at other locations. And where and how, for example, the Sense and Sensibilities is a phrase of Jane Austen's. Practical reason is a phrase of Immanuel Kant's. We're going to use the phrases of authors and of human identities in various times before we get to the books, because we're going to be using, a hyper science. Any word or phrase, you can put the word hyper before it and nature after it. Now, what is a hyper Jim Crow nature of logic? Even, in other words, it can't defend that it's for free speech. It can't defend that it's for science without valuing the locations associated with that. Being and having been fake / hyper fake. And the slash is not just where and how it is increasingly. These are three identities of volume that are inseparable. Where and how there is an extent we have of complete possession over the identity of volume that all volumes share. And every volume has a distinct identity of relationship to itself. The volume of your blood has a distinct identity from the volume of your hair. My hair started growing back. I don't know what the heck. I think I was poisoning me. Vaccines, I teach you things. And so I want to use her name. There was a girl in middle school, for example. Like, there were kids that I was glad to go with the girl at the last second. I found out I could go when I was in middle school. But then I found out too, when I was knew simultaneously, had something to do with insidiousness between a former Mayor Gold, who had come in and involved my sixth grade teacher as a victim with background conversations. I don't know the extent of, I know they coordinated it between her and the other kids, and live progressions she needed to hide. It affected kids, I don't know. I'll accept you didn't make it like how I know that people from Central Connecticut State University have been in criminally foreign influenced roles and uses of little kids at child campuses intercities through time, and with uses of houses and locations next to the schools. Also involve planting fake evidences, identity thefts and frauds, where and how also recorded are how the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, and the interbranch and the exception nature kept planting evidences together at locations. Criminally foreign influence readings of statutes where they know where they criminally know they've been giving the value of the benefit of the doubt between who's lying or not to themselves at locations interbranch to make things up and to hide things having been made up, including preemptively showing needs to that or where they're used remotely. Now you have to understand where and how. Forgiveness is not to give up, but forgiveness is because they're only capable of that. All exception, nature, and demonstration of the same thing. Appears to be in demonstration of other. That's what they're setting up, fake exceptions between people knowing each other. Increasingly used connections of it, communicated to individuals. So this is also tied to the school shootings because they have the resource officers in it. They have the police forms with collusions with forensics locations. Former director of the FBI, overt criminal enterprises, private ones involved with the kids' narratives and subjects when I was in grammar school and when other people were in grammar school. And it's still increasingly, they're kept needing to hide that. So I never, the 2 times I went to take speech classes and I dropped out of them because the kids had been involved with this with the teachers too. When I was a little kid, when I was in high school, for example, and these are people that are kept needing to hide life progressions between campuses, and they're coordinating, having coordinated things on off campuses. So they also use so then they invested these people into what they call the intelligence community, and roles with the private policing too of the campuses. And so that's relevant because they're hiding it's relevant to how they've been getting away with replacing what's actually recorded over the phones with the police by fabricating audio and video transcripts as police. Therefore, as their roles with crime methods, acts and natures at locations with overt criminal enterprises too. So there's a Joshua Stryker involved with a whole bunch of people. I never saw him in my area in my life. Who's in recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with predicate acts on off Central Connecticut State University, on off Trinity College, and with a whole bunch of people with the 3 spots at the end of the Berlin Turnpike before the heart of Hartford, where George Washington had to leave slavery, entrenched, north and south, sickly distinctly, for that method that knew that it employed, how sickly, not distinctly, by everyone's self-valued, even though it's against everyone, blamed on other things, others ourselves, when nature keeps demonstrating worse than and or as colonization either. Even when colonization can be used as a proof too. What is slavery about? Colonization. Remote use is criminally foreign influence uses of all locations, areas, and states from abroad. You see, that itself was used remotely. We know that, oh, because it's a dictator, oh, because it's democracy, dictator, and collusion. Anything that is invisible but still discernible can only be used properly, for evolution. So this is Little Rap Guy and Friends. In the ancient gaming system, I have to get the ancient gaming system up. It's better than social media. This is, this is how ancient gaming system, this is how evolution's fruits and gifts. It means from nowhere really come. It uses how the earth is hyper additional to our identity of volume, while as it distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. That it's how we could discern the extent of the existence of the hyper simultaneously greater than, and simultaneously more finite than, for two aspects, natures of as volume, where volume equals value as nature / nature as value. See, before the origin of the XY axis, and with and as its value, is the hyperorogenesis, the identity of volume that we could discern actually to an extent, as actually honestly we could discern to the extent we can actually discern honestly its identity of relationship to itself, which again, its identity of volume is distinct from all other identities of volume, the hypersimultaneous, and the only increasing value of that. What is multiplicative or divisive, even what is subtractive, those are exceptions in exception nature and demonstration of the same thing, while being in demonstration of what exception nature are about for the hypersystem, for that means and method singular that we could use to understand all their systems. And we are systems tactical deteriorated from its own, because the breaching method knew that the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures at all locations, like criminal insidiousness nature, of positive and negative treatments, fact treatment nature, oriented predicate acts, delivery system method, nature's role, self value. That's what you hear when you hear people making opinions and convictions about what Jim Crow laws were about. Those are opinions and convictions effectively being and having been employed, measured, maintained, self cultivated tools, blaming other things, others, ourselves, and investing people incapable of allowing anyone to demonstrate how to simultaneously. Everybody's actual value was assigned values that have nothing to do with it. So the positive and negative locations in memory of it as the identity of the computer, for example. It's just because they can. The only reason anything else is capable of happening is because they're assigning a positive to mean something additional to and as itself. and as in a relationship to sequence slash simultaneousness simultaneously, also increasingly. And that is also increasing value. So there is an identity that is simultaneously a singular method that is also generating all kind of plural methods and demonstration of the same thing. It brings means out of nowhere. It makes even greater Earth's a special difference. We're in how it's to an extent positive to all parts of space nature. But then it is further more and more positive forever nature being made means being made here, means out of nowhere, including especially where we are fact-cheating nature. That's why we have to, part of why we are, the facts are physics. They are simultaneously nature. They are simultaneously identity. These are three distinct volumes. They are three distinct volume sciences of the same one. Boxing is fun. So kept his name returned. So this literally has a Debbie Gold and a Tim O'Brien and an Andrew O'Brien and a Dennis O'Brien. I don't know his mother's name. I don't know her. I never met Lee Gold either. I don't know him. Debbie Gold had two times she pretended to know me on the record that was real. And in the record, in the background, they were putting influencing, forcing, tricking, hurting, persuading people to put fake things into the record. They were speaking fake things with overt criminal enterprises. So it has something to do with people forging and switching names and sticking fake evidences, physical, even digital, on off Trinity College, switching names with interbranch locations, using and having used that location and the locations next to it since I was a kid with the people, but for also pretending uses of the word maturity. Part of the sequence shifts. So the investigations and investigators and their campuses are recorded being and having been used remotely. So real quick, you start having, even hundreds of names when you have officers collude, especially where and how those collusions connect to ones that came before that. Especially when you have kids from pretending, and everyone's using. We're forced to use other people's names, like I forget what Rich Dombrowski. I don't know his parents' name. Rich Dombrowski and his neighbors, and Brian Bonin. They were recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with the Dillon family and with other military families and foreign and domestic people, criminally foreign influenced, who were attaching me to fake locations and fake ties and natures of ties to themselves and others with people in that area. And they used their roles with drugs and things like that to do that. Their roles with wire crimes. They used wire crime methods, the interbranch families, to lock people's roles at each age, where they're victims themselves, only capable of doing it though. No. In other words, this is where people A through Z and the branch everyone's been used since you guys are kids. And then that was used at other locations. And in other words, this method measures and maintains. Because since I was a kid, I could explain how to read the fakeness of the executive branch's voices, of the judicial branch's voices, of the overt criminal enterprise's voices. In other words, relative to if someone's going to deny those truths. That, for example, in other words, if Native Americans' rights are sickly, distinctly now prevented from our own. Black people's rights are sickly, distinctly prevented from our own, differentially, but differentially increasingly where everyone missed too again, where and how those differences, real differences that were applied to fake differences, that was also assigned to what had nothing to do with that, specifically for uses of sense and sensibilities, incapable of speaking honestly about criminal insidiousness, natures of positive treatments and negative treatments simultaneously, and identity treatments. It was against the law, too. If you know witch trials, if you know there were branches of government that had roles with witch trials and slavery, we know that there was something entrenched. And it was rather than observe that, we've been observing types of experts and types of victim predator reactions, blaming other things other than ourselves for what the breaching method caused there and was using there. Uses of singular. It was uses of all the negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures means ulterior uses. This method knew what is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, overt criminal enterprises colluded with places on off town, on off Airport Drive, on off UPS, all along Route 3. People colluded with overt criminal enterprises. Also, as the people involved with use, criminally foreign influence uses of the corners of the streets on Griswold Street. So there's a Joshua Stryker, who's one of the ones involved with the FBI and interstates police forms, like state police, people involved with Whiting forensics plays. Also further with a Bob Chase, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with federal evidences, crimes, and child abuses with a child sex offender principal who was involved with other natures of child abuses at the same time, and further upskirt nature pictures, uses, and roles with the FBI and with state police and with Wethersfield Police Chief Cintron's daughter. Now there is also the daughter of or kids of O'Neill family, who I don't know if with Wethersfield Police has roles with FBI through time since I was a kid, with overt criminal enterprises and various natures of federal criminals, recorded and planting evidences with them, uses of corners of buildings and streets. So a whole bunch of people tied to recorded tied to Joshua Stryker, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed him involved, having been involved with abuses of girls associated with the corner of Griswold Street and Fairlane Drive. Also a house at the corner of Fairlane Drive and Carriage Hill is associated with a guy who made confessions years ago in a speech class I had. And I had to take that speech class again. I had to go back to school another year when I was a senior. These are people who were criminally involved with that, putting fake things in databases because they had the interbranch and the foreign. I mean, the interbranch as with the foreign kept needing that. They had the little boys and girls individually grouped in together. You know, they did tricks to pretend they know other people, because this captain keeps the amount of names interbranch, uses of other people's names, you know, uses of criminally foreign influence statute, uses of criminally foreign influence interpretations of immunities from prosecution, and simultaneously as needs for prosecution, narratives, and natures is actually recorded as it's actually relevant. So there are a whole bunch of people involved with the state judicial branch offices, involved with Chet Casper, who's also there's a bunch of people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's a Dr. Dingleberry. There's also one with a Dr. Dewberry. I don't know if they're the same name, same person, but they work for the same place with a whole bunch of names. Institute living on the campus of Harvard Hospital has a whole bunch of roles with overt criminal enterprises and with untimely deaths through time. Some of them might have been made up because then they pretend people are using what other people told them. Hearsay. These are people planting fake hearsay so they could use cases and courts to put fake things into records, falsify evidences into records so they can use criminally foreign influence readings of statutes. For example, as the Peruta families, intercity, that has something to do with the corner of Elm Street and Rocky Hill and Route 3. There are males and females with the name, they use the name Bobby, that are involved with police forms on off Central Connecticut State University to the training of them. They have each of the departments sickly distinctly the possession of a breaching method that has them sickly distinct, that has it through their own other distinct possessions of each of the departments as victims. As victims that need to pretend such is personal when we say such. That's why it's important when people say that Interbranch has been forging and switching names and has been preventing responses because they have roles with criminally foreign influence readings of statutes. For example, this I don't know this guy, but I saw him on YouTube. I only know he confirmed, demonstrated, recorded he was involved with uses of insidious uses. I didn't know it was criminal insidious use of, besides the extent everyone is still overtly / insidious uses of all locations, especially New York City. The suburbs, since before cars, were designed by that which slavery, north and south, designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, natures, to employ us and the farmers, reliant upon each other as through its breaching method. There are proofs that one of the only perennial vegetables is an asparagus. No, how Mary Washington is the name of one of the most famous types of asparagus. There are proofs that this breaching method had took away the actually having been cultivated, propagated by nature, food sources of the Native Americans. So to be of the entire species volume, they forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, self-value there. For means to cause positive value nature progressions. Where and how that, as exceptions to what nature would demonstrate and demonstrates really causes positive value nature progressions. And knowing that it would be demonstrating those means to cause positive value nature progressions, we're going to, and whereas negative value nature progressions, we have to understand how criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments are just as relevant simultaneously to discern as overtly negative treatments. We have to use what is actually recorded. So when I was in 8th grade, I believe, 7th or 8th grade, I was asked to go on a date with a girl and some other kids. But then but was recorded involved with the insidiousness on my street with the sixth grade teacher from the other school now. Now, seventh and eighth we had as the same school. Now that school and those schools are still through time. There's recorded uses of a crime method /S on off in between the campuses connected, and they're locking people to self-valued roles with criminally foreign influence uses of the sense and sensibilities of little kids, wherein how the interbranch families in the foreign confess, demonstrate, record, confirm, timed how they are differentially criminally foreign influenced, roles with communications to them, wherein how, each is measured and maintained, not allowed to use that we could actually use to discern what actually caused the negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures of things too, like slavery. You know, obviously slavery is a predicate acts delivery system method, roles is part of it. So how they hurt everyone sickly distinctly was consciously then to keep not only not discerned how sickly non distinctly, but to keep that self value not discerned. Because now the only way to make positive value nature progressions was it through, conjunction with the as identities of logic forced by the nature of the things that can't defend themselves, and us as fact human nature from that which really bound the all the criminal insidious natures of acts and methods and natures like criminal insidiousness natures, acts like predicate acts, murderers to all locations, areas, states. And so, what to do with it then and now? They knew they could measure and maintain. Other pretended for them when they know they measure and maintain. The mental health people are involved with all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes that are also of other natures of crimes simultaneously. They have wire crime acts and methods. They've been stacking fake things into databases with their families also at locations. When I was a kid, some stranger I don't even know on the north side of my high school, for example, handed me a piece of um, porcelain they broke off of a spark plug, and they asked me to throw it on the thing on the window of a car. I did not throw it on the window of the car. I went like that, like I was going to do it, and I said, I'm not throwing it on the car. And then someone picked it up and threw it on the car, and the window broke. Little piece of thing does that, apparently. I mean, or whatever. Then when we went to the court, they had other 8 charges too, and had other people that had committed crimes, and they pretended I was a part of it. I made one exception by buying a stolen property, by trading what had been purchased on a credit card for it. I believe, and because these were also people involved with that with a so my 5th grade teacher and a 6th grade teacher and his kids were involved with a former mayor, and so how they have other mayors too has something to do with their spots next to Buckley High School. For example, this is intercity. They have spots next to a CCSU magnet school on Franklin Avenue in Hartford. This is next to the campuses. They have all sides of the campuses used by for an identity theft, fraud, slander method. Because when we observe it as science honestly, which sickly distinctly hurts the people, of New York City and of the suburbs from here to Russia, they were designed before our founders were even born by a breaching method that effectively kept colonization used remotely then and now, where and how it is a fact, human nature value, where and how it is a scientific value, distinctly, non distinctly, and simultaneously, where how things are actually manifest distinctly, non distinctly, and simultaneously. All that is worse than obfuscated consciously through other motivations, natures, needs, interests. And that those motivations are also being and having been employed by the breaching method that employed a whole bunch of things off the records by employing roles with syntactical collusion, with itself, collusions with itself, and uses of that. It knew they would be manifest, needing to hide from and to hurt what is actually capable of being manifest at each age and nature of campus, sickly distinctly. They multi-front ordered connect method, connecting and having connected each age of each family member. See, this has uses of words like family with overt criminal enterprises movies and narratives they say are real. They have the overt criminal enterprises recorded as actually recorded. How kept needing to hide the same sequence of finite active progressive lies together through time. So Yukon, there was also a Mark Violet, and I believe it's a Karen Violet, and then he has a brother Mike Violet. I don't know if it's his sister Andrea Violet. I don't know her. They tried to make an exception with people at the corner of Elm Street and Rocky Hill and Route 3. Since before the police chiefs, Cintron's family, extended family, and daughter were associated with that corner with the Mazzucato Bakery. That corner was involved with the police chief in Weathersfield, with Rocky Hill and other cities, police and retired and standing families, courts, families, extended, and all exception nature tied to them, like prisons, families. Also rolls on off the state prison offices and the state judicial branch offices, with identity theft, fraud, slander instances rolls, and the timing of them. They have connections and then uses of them years later, like where and how they were using Connecticut boxing gyms before the World Trade Center attack, relevant to confessions by a whole bunch of people I didn't know, but who knew my name through others at Central Connecticut State University right before the attack. And it also was demonstrated to me because it was relevant because it had been confessions about Central Connecticut State University's ties to people that had been pretending to know me from other classrooms in the past, and who had asked me about people who had made confessions about in demonstration of their roles with overt criminal enterprises. See, these are people that are overt. They're using calling. They call into the police. They have real roles. They call the police. They have gangs, roles, narratives with the police. So they have spots on Weathersfield Avenue, which is near where it goes into Weathersfield, and there's a shopping center in Weathersfield there near the Weathersfield Police Department where it is now. Used to be where the um, library is off Church Street. All the corners on Church Street. The business's house is also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed a whole bunch of ways. Haven't been involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders instances since they were kids. To make fake exceptions to pretend to know people. As people involved also intercampuses, intercities, and uses of it. And uses of them pretending it's personal. See, they were forced to tricked her, persuaded to bring this up for their roles, with many tied to and as former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, used to work for Patton Boggs in, I don't know if he still does, in Washington, but he has a lawyer, Robert Chevalier, who's also involved with a whole bunch of men and women who set up fake, who had roles with identity thefts and frauds and slanders on campuses or off campuses that had been um, instances that had been orchestrated specifically so they could pull off uses of planting evidences roles, physical, digital, identity, on and off the campuses, switching names, forging names. So there's a officer name who uses the name Darth Vader. Darth Vader. I don't know if it's. They also use how they have on and off campus police and police forms, private and other, with the campuses that are filmed 24/7, where they've been using that, where how they're involved and haven't been involved criminally for an envelope. They've been using such to hide, you know, things preemptively, actively, and increasingly. So the people that know my name from my town at Trinity College will confess, demonstrate, confirm to you. They had been, even timed when I was going to be walking. There's a Mike Pandolf is one of the ones, and houses near me were brought up by the confessions of the girl at Trinity College. And see, I always let people, when they walk up and they say something about it, I don't care. You know what I'm saying? But then it got brought up because a principal child abusers campus got it brought up to me. And the news media has roles with it. They attach me and others to fake conversations with themselves, with others, and with our families. And they attach them with the fake words and conversations about us. And any truths that were involved, in other words, they lie about that too. They have roles with predicate acts with the police for fabricating police reports since I was a kid, with people that also call in things fake to the police. They invest them since I was a kid. People involved with Trinity College planting evidences, criminally foreign influence uses of the side entrances to Millwoods Park for identity theft, fraud, slanders. Then they have little girls at corners near side entrances recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, and men tied to them, lying to them. And then when they ask a question, they get scared to answer because of the rules of the overt criminal enterprises and of the private ones. Also, per the uses of those are the people involved with the uses of the corners of the street on Griswold Street through time. As people enter campuses, including medical and fire campuses, intercities, involved with predicate acts methods recorded. Simultaneously, wrongdoing methods recorded. And it's also differentially, simultaneously wrongdoing and predicate acts. Rules with the breaching method. Motivation with that are not even their own. They need to pretend offensively. They need to use their kids to pretend motivation. This breaching method knew sickly distinctly the fact-cheating nature-oriented victims would be people A through Z, including the differences, the bodies, individual. Of the branches, individually grouped too. Grouped, they use the switching names roles. They use pretending they have the right to lie. They have readings of statutes, criminally foreign influence readings of statutes that left out exceptions, in other words, they're not hiding behind. They're not hiding how they have been using roles. In other words, there was a Rob Hill. Hey Anthony, I only got a minute, but going to see you are still doing the good work for the children. Thank you, Rob Hill. we could have evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere. We could change the whole world right now. Like for example, in Ukraine, and everywhere there are wars are manifest now. We could use Ukraine would agree, and Russia would agree, and other countries, like especially the ones with nuclear weapons, would agree if we do it right, syntactically and using the right science with stack means to, like, for example, to alleviate, not put them into some little rat traps that, like, since before founding, the suburbs were tactically denatured to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Simultaneously, were they planted ways to make positive value nature progressions, acts and natures only if they're going to be as criminal and ceases natures of positive treatments roles in nature's roles. Everyone was enslaved that way. Even colonization individually grouped them together, even countries. So a leader, no matter how powerful they get, if they're over locations, areas, and states criminally foreign influence, they're going to be forced to entertain and or to self-value criminally foreign influence, fact treatment, nature, qualities, aspects like premises treatments, sequence value treatments. They can't afford properly discern what is actually discernible regarding the ancients, regarding their roles with the republic for which we stand, regarding where yin yang. Yin yang and alpha and omega are hyperditional to themselves. So just the same exact way, the human volume science and male and female are hyper additional to themselves, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. And this comes with demonstration, as we are actually manifest. All things are actually of also there being hyper simultaneously. The simultaneous and the hyper simultaneous are bound. And where and how the simultaneous can be the hyper simultaneous, the increasing value of sequence, truth. For example, as it came before the order of the finite, the smallest finite detail about the republic for which we stand, as it actually could be, and can, you know. So, in other words, Paxig, I teach us things the species body longs to trade, to rise again. Or so we could, in other words, there are even superpowers have problems with migrant populations, not by accident, a whole bunch of different reasons they know. But it's juxtaposed with all that everyone missed. And it was increasing, it is increasingly causing negative value nature progressive acts of nature that are increasingly being valued by identities of logic, valuing it having been blamed on other things other than themselves because it's still here using it. Everyone can't fathom how they're doing it. They're doing it by playing the sense and sensibilities of people individually grouped and together, by showing them how they need to hide preemptively, actively, and increasingly. Uses of this, uses of this that have been used. This is how it keeps each age of the shared correlation. The species body, like see how little kids are shorter. They're closer to the ground details we were supposed to pay attention to. Adults are taller. We can see further ahead. We're supposed to pay attention. We don't know to the same system. What's really going to cause positive value nature progression action nature? And is that true? We're supposed to be constantly evaluating such. See, well, this uses the algorithm /s. Oh, it's either plural or singular. No, algorithm /s is what an identity is. That's why and how. In other words, the sciences were separated from understanding how they are different, how they have a individually grouped and together identity of relativity to the identity of hyperrelativity, which also has, it's an identity of relativity that is distinct from how it is hyperrelative, per how it is distinctly to Earth positive. But it is also another way, distinctly, non distinctly positive to all parts of space nature. And we are now using that its system for that, relative to that, a special difference as Earth's. It is forced from here, Leith of Hadith, as forced space nature transfer, as nature being its identity of volume, its identity of volume's relationship to itself in the only increasing value of that. So, this is invested, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people A through Z. That insidiousness, like with politics, oh, it's politics, oh, it's democracy, oh, it's wealth. They didn't even discern the natures of wealth. We were forced to try to gain some wealth, forced to entertain what was still entrenched. Because not because we needed to gain wealth, because the way it was entrenched too. It was a method. It was entrenched for a method to measure and maintain who was going to try to fact cheat nature, counter or become capable of countering or doing, as fact cheat, blaming properly the real cause of negative value nature progression X natures, rather than being invested in further roles. Blaming on other things other than ourselves, what nature was continually demonstrating to us as fact cheating nature. For example, the increasing relevance of colonization. That is not even debatable. So we have not debatable things gotten away with being and having been debated. There are proofs that the reason they've been putting up about UFOs, maybe it is people with some kind of technology that's military, but there are proofs that it is plausible that the reason they're putting up evidence is, looks like they have a stingray or something they tried to make into a to design some fake video, because a whole bunch of experts, they need to pretend they could speak for proper evidence reception. Is a certain kind of a whole bunch of victims / victim predators / hyper victims that knew they would, this measures and maintains that, and how we don't use the revelations by what the youngest voices want and need to say. The Native Americans' rights, Black people's rights, Black Americans' rights, and everyone else's rights. How many cultures they call white? They're so different. We want to talk about how they're sickly, distinctly victims of a breaching method, and how that causes negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. We could discern that. But the means we have to discern it is being blocked by a whole bunch of people invested blaming and having blamed other people, other things, others ourselves, for what really we could demonstrate. New York City is designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. All exception and exception nature, like people in penthouses, there's exception nature. And demonstration is the same thing too. And they'll tell you that, but not if we have to. In other words, we have to discern what's not a side. It has been using all real difference to keep all discernible differences to keep from to keep what is actually discernible, measured and maintained, not discerned, and or discerned to an extent that people could only know that they can't afford discernment of how they could discern. Like, for example, the police know that the police are corrupt, but there is a certain kind of victim that it has to. We need that police. That's a law identity. That's the nature of the law identity. Therefore, the identity of the law, three different ways that they can't speak for it honestly. That's how they are victims, and that is used remotely because this measures and maintains that they can't defend themselves, how having reacted and how reacting as fact sheet nature, and us from what uses and has used that remotely. So there are West Hartford School. There's a West Hartford School. There's a officer, a woman, I believe, named O'Neill, who's involved with a male officer named O'Neill. I don't know what he looks like either. And then there are a whole bunch of people involved with uses of themselves walking near the corners of the streets with the child abusers roles with it, including with the news media involved. WTNH, WFSB, or Fox News, one of those news, I think it was WTNH, had, I don't remember the name, a Delafair family to pretend they knew me. I was brought around them, and they made an exception to pretend they know me when they make some exception. It was real fast. They're involved with houses on Ridge Road. I'm involved with a whole bunch of girls I don't know at all. In other words, they had them walking on an advertisement, on an article regarding the school. There's been a bunch of bad things with the principal child abuser school. I caught them with more worse than they put him in prison for before that and since. And they've been using, they hid how they have on campuses. They sent me a picture of an upskirt from behind on Twitter. Now the FBI is involved with an Ian with this. There's at least one Ian involved with this, and neighbors of his. Now these are people that live down the street from where the Gold family lives or used to live, which is not far from me. And there's also, I just found out recently, just like the other day, there's a Gold family or a Gold woman or whatever. There's a Gold people with the name Gold. And there's a former mayor Gold involved with the Yellow House at a corner on Griswold Street, which is also right next to, across the street from a side entrance to Millwoods Park, which is involved with violence. All exceptions, exception nature, where I had roles with things that, what do you call it, switching names and sequences, when he was mentioned that on Facebook, which is one of Joe Aiello. He's one of the people from who went to other schools, who attached me to fake locations, fake words, fake ties to other people, and fake natures of ties to other people into themselves through time. They made fake exceptions pretending to know me real quick. That are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have roles with predicate acts, identity theft, fraud, slanders through time with people, a whole bunch of names at locations next to Trinity College, next to the campuses intercities, like next to Buckley High School in Hartford, next to Hartford Hospital. These are people involved with, uses of, quote, right to lie, unquote, using a guy who says his name is James Comey, who's recorded involved with sequence shifts and predicate acts roles, criminally foreign influence uses of cases as child abuses roles, as elderly abuses roles, criminally foreign influenced uses of the courts involved with resolving issues that are voiced and a whole bunch not voiced And How Not Voice is also involved with torture, because these are also people leading up to the World Trade Center attack since. It's got a whole bunch of prosecutors and judges, families involved with the families near me, involved with wire crimes and confessions, forging and switching names with Weathersfield police, and with involved with this and on and off the campuses. So there's a Bob Chase with a forensics place, the Whiting forensics place. There's also a Joshua Julian who is involved with the digital crimes, and people involved further with various natures of pictures of little girls and other natures of crimes digital on and off of Principal Sex Offenders Campus's Facebook page before it was caught. He was one of the people that was forced to force that. Whole bunch of people tied to Whiting's forensics in the past. Whiting forensics in the past. They had crimes with a whole bunch of federal criminals and people and against innocent people before they were caught. And I mean, before that, against innocent people who have been charged criminally for criminally, who have been charged criminally through criminally foreign influence, with the people charging people have been using that to hide life aggressions, uses of themselves and of their kids for federal crimes on and off campuses orchestrated, being and having been orchestrated. And they name stack a whole bunch of people, force WFSB, Fox Connecticut News, and WTNH distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously furthered a whole bunch of lies, predicate acts, identity theft, fraud, slanders, instances, fake words with me, fake ties to me, fake ties to little kids, even too, and elderly, fake natures of ties to them. With the news, as their roles with interbranch, forging names, switching names, fabricating police reports. So there's a Phil Cololo who's further involved with the Joshua Julian with digital crimes and with Whiting Forensics has crimes with their patients and criminals since before they got caught, and against innocent people that were crimes designed to force those people not to say what they caught them doing. Here! So get them from the interbranch, forging and switching names. These are people involved with Sandy Hook too, Newtown. Whole bunch of people from Central Connecticut State University and Trinity College have roles with predicate acts on my street, wrongdoing on my street. As victims, everyone's forced to speak to other people. And she'll, oh, it was crazy. I mean, they can't laugh that with it. I'm crazy. Call me name. Call me name on paper, though. Call me name on paper. I'll delineate your delusions from your criminally foreign influenced natures and souls. So there's a Leahy family also involved with these Dingleberry, Dewberry people with the locations next to the campuses, with people with identity thefts and frauds and slanders. And them fake conversations with me as doctors and about legal cases that are involved with a whole bunch of federal criminals before they got caught. Then there were defendants with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, with a part of a case that was ongoing at the time of my father's death. Also, you know, leading up to that, in that context, and since people were involved with predicate acts on and off my street, that were involved also with them on and off campuses, that are also the people that in cases that were involved and with federal criminals since before they got caught, and with former director of the FBI's co-defendants, are personally involved with the cliques with this Leahy family of doctors that pretend to have conversations with ties to me. There's a woman with the name Lombardo with Hartford Hospital, a whole bunch of people that work for Hartford Hospital with the mental health people involved with drugs and medicines crimes with kids that I grew up with. And they use that to make them, wire crime acts and methods roles. Then as fake exceptions to know people and lies about what came before that. A whole bunch of ties to this Debbie Gold and the O'Brien family, with the Gold family and the Bryan family, with judicial branch and executive branch, I found out about how the judicial branch has been involved with the campuses sickly distinctly too. Individually grouped and together, they are recorded how being and having been used remotely. And to get in, so they have the corner, the building. There's a building at the corner of Church Street and Main Street in Old Weathersfield. And there are other corners on a house, and there's a house at the corner there across from it. Those are people, a whole bunch of people involved with Hartford Hospital, with the intelligence community and the military, involved intercampuses and involved at Trinity College and CCSU, with off campuses and on off campuses locations used. They have roles with so it might be training of police because they also have they have acting teachers from Central Connecticut State University. Whole bunch of people from Central Connecticut State University into Britain are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed names that are involved with wire crimes with Weathersfield Police through time and other natures of federal crimes with them. Criminally foreign influence uses of locations conjunctive to those those streets too, all the way from Main Street in Old Weathersfield to all along Wells Road, all the way to Central Connecticut State University / Paul Manafort Drive. They also have recorded how how they used remotely each side of that campus through time, with the people that have been roles and backgrounds planting fake things into databases. Others are keeping that going on, and themselves spreading lies and rumors from classes we're not in the classes. And also, these are people interbranch involved with the child offenders. I only know that they when they tried to make exceptions to pretend that they knew where I was going to be, with the people that were from my grammar school that pretended and they knew me before that to others. No, they're not just doing this to me, and it's not personal. They pretend, oh, this person's doing it for that. They pretend they bring up our motivations in the New Britain Superior Court. They're also bringing up their motivations for their kids. They don't care about their kids, or they would have followed me. They wouldn't make things up. And they do it with physical delusions simultaneously. And they pretend I had physical delusions, people who faked conversations with me. A long time they've been using these triage people, getting involved with people's business. They're fake punks, because the interbranch has been doing that since founding. So when I was a little kid, I first caught them at uses of corners. There's a people with the corner of Bolter and Morgan Circle that Weathersfield Police confirmed the roles with a Kerr family years ago. I don't know them. I never saw them on the campus of my middle school in my life. Never saw them on the campus of my high school. One time they tried to make an exception. It was off the record, and they were one. It was something to do with boyfriends that were sharing a Heather Hansen, and they bumped near me. And they were all making these. They're pretending not to like each other because they were with her at the same time. I had to use her. I'm sorry you have to use your name, Heather. You sought me out with this. These are people that have all these ties to my street, and they're individually grouped and together, had ties, and they went out of their way as individuals to pretend I was tied to their group because they were influenced to it. Because then they keep people incapable of going back and being honest about the past. So there's also a Chet Casper involved with the state judicial branch offices, and with people with this Dewberry guy involved with drugs and medicines, crimes with little kids, and with the Weathersfield police, for the families that answer the phones for the police, involved with the fire department. Through time, they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed criminally conscious criminally foreign influence uses of shopping centers, like the one on off Town Line Drive, one in Rocky Hill, involved. There's a families that of a Daryl Chandler. I don't know Daryl Chandler. He and others went out of their way to pretend to make fake exceptions to make it look like I knew them with some Korean with a Korean Taekwondo place who Joe Demaro also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with his family, with and his extended family, with overt criminal enterprise as his older brother did, too. You know, involved confessions about my grammar school teacher after I was no longer in the grammar school because they were in the background putting fake ties to me and these people, and fake natures of ties to me and people that I had nothing to do with. They try to make fake exceptions. There's a Ray Reynolds also involved with a Harris family. They're involved with a kindergarten I went to 1 year, and then it closed, and then I went to the. So in other words, the house is next to there too. There's are the people involved with. There's a Spada family, and there's a Della Fera family that are involved with some wire crimes and falsified police reports, crimes, criminally foreign and fake conversations with me and my family that the police pretended when I was a kid and now as an adult, as people involved with them with themselves and their families went in and had conversations with them, left out the parts with their roles with overt criminal enterprises and with the mayors and people living next to them involved then and now sickly distinctly. So WFSB, Fox Connecticut News, and WTNH, please follow mandated along. Give me someone to respond to for the rest of the, other fake things too. That there's a Roger Suzanne who attached me to fake conversations with them. I had no, at WFSB. And they told lies. They attached me to fake ties to other people, fake natures of ties to other people. That's their roles with spots on off and conjunctive to names conjunctive to even from other states and foreign conjunctive to Elm Street and Rocky Hill, all along Route 3, which goes by the state judicial branch offices. And there are houses next to the state judicial branch offices that Enzo Fienza recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed things. Also, and then he confirmed them on Facebook too. See, we had to pretend they put people, the investigators have been used remotely since founding, kept used to hide things offensively, shown needs to do so preemptively, actively, and progressively, while being victims and hyper victims not knowing how to respond, just like the rest of the victims, A through Z, all those different sectorally distinct forms of victims per that breaching methods, uses of law and of the nature of the law and of the identity of law, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously relevant to that which is hyper simultaneous, as actually discerned. Now, one has learned. CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News, please, one of you guys. On off, for example, CNN, on off Central Connecticut State University and Paul Manafort Drive. The male police forms and the female police forms and judiciary. A Bobby or a Bobby Jean, I don't know, and a male Bobby. Confirmed, demonstrated, requirement. It's the same one, but there was also a Chris Walters who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with houses near me, with houses next to the high school and next to Child's campuses and next to him, involved with the names with predicate acts, including on off Church Street, which runs into Main Street, Weathersfield, which runs into Wells Road, which goes all the way there to Central Connecticut State University in Britain. But this is also right where the witch trials place and where George Washington had to come to counter-extort that entrenched with worse than colonization, worse than just in slavery, North and South, sickly distinctly too, no. He had to leave it entrenched when with the counter-extortion to enable ourselves to win the last battle of the Revolutionary War. But he had to leave slavery entrenched sickly distinctly north and south. So our founders' plan also involved forcing them to fight with each other to overcome slavery. But see, this is still, they didn't have means to defend their own identities, or they would have been sensed and discerned by the breaching method that had complete possession over everyone's sense and sensibility. So to understand what Jane Austen means and meant properly, there's things that she doesn't even realize she meant. Because even Immanuel Kant didn't have free speech. Vaccines. I teach you things. So they maintain everyone speaking through others. They maintain complete possession. They have a whole bunch of people with Harvard Hospital involved through time with names at the community center and locations next to it with the intelligence community as the ones that are criminally foreign influenced, as the ones further on off the state, on the Wethersfield town offices and election locations, as schools, and as election locations, town offices, religious locations. These are also people that have their sensibilities, uses of religious locations, where everyone's forced and tricked, like the interbranch men and women involved with these falsified police reports, with the child abuser principal that forced, rolls with that interbranch too, and the exceptions tied to them, like this Whiting forensics place, recorded crimes with their patients and criminals before they got caught, and against innocent people. How they've been motivated to it is also recorded through time. Control the mind. So these are also people that attach me to fake words with themselves and others, and my family to fake words with themselves and others about the World Trade Center attack and about relevant legal cases. These are proven after the World Trade Center attack. What had happened in the Ninth Circuit Court right next to the World Trade Center towers right before they were attacked. Post-dated documents criminally post-dated from inside the court to appear as if they'd been handed in late. That was proven after the World Trade Center attack. That proven led up to a 2006 district court case in Connecticut with a former director of the FBI in his defendant capacities. So the FBI can be sued individually. And his co-defendants are also recorded then and now, increasingly involved with a series of predicate acts and predicate acts methods and motivations and wrongdoing roles with the police forms in the foreign involved on off Trinity College and CCSU with predicate acts with names also through time, criminally foreign influence uses of the corners of the street on Griswold Street for various natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders, and how they have all these conjunctions to intercampuses uses time, even medical ones. So there are consciously criminally foreign influence uses of readings of statutes where they give the benefit of the doubt of who's lying or not at the last second to the interbranch, to the exceptions tied to them. People work for them private, etc. Now that's why it's so important to show how they've been planting evidences. See, they've been used remotely doing this too. So I still have not been responded to by the principal child abusers campus, also per the various methods and natures of wire crimes that are effectively used to keep each age of executive police forms families, each age of judicial families, in other words, prosecutors and judges and other members of those locations, distinctly non-distinctly, even sheriffs. There's a whole bunch of people with ties to the whole bunch of syntax ways, names, ties, and uses of mind who have ties to the corner of Wells Road and Walker Hill, who have roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders that all trace back to the recorded used um, lie progressions. The recorded used criminally foreign influenced uses of kids record as actually recorded, having consciously demonstrated they were knowingly not to, but only to an extent, criminally foreign influenced, differentially, and that is self-value, and it was they're being exploited by them, even shown needs and means to do so preemptively. So all kinds of people that lived around former Mayor Gold. It's also all kinds of interbranch racketeering with evidences tied to where and to how actually manifest is Two Rod Highway, where it runs into Hangdog Lane and that into Route 3. Note with a better than 90-degree angle that one has to take if they take a right hand turn onto Route 3 from Hangdog Lane. Okay. Don't fall behind. So, in other words, they pretend not to understand people when people report that Interbranch had been forging switch names, preventing writing, using wire crimes with the Wethersfield police, and Interbranch fabricating audio and video transcripts to hide how they've been using criminally foreign influence readings of statutes. Fear. Also, lawyers have been fabricating audio and video at locations in Interbranch distinctly and sickly non-distinctly, and that has been used to hide worse, sickly non-distinctly and distinctly too. Relevant. Ugh. Thank you.